economic issues and budget issues, because on Friday, during a parliamentary hearing, the Reserve Bank Governor was forced to admit that public spending was in fact contributing to resurgent inflation.
Mathematically, you're right. Public demand, expenditure and private sector, all of that adds to demand. That's logical, it's mathematical, that's what happens.
I want to talk about the Treasurer's words, not your words.
I don't have a view on the Treasurer's words. Fiscal policy decisions are decisions for the government and the parliament. They are not for the Reserve Bank of Australia.
Now, for his part, the Treasurer is still persisting with the line that our economic reality is somehow a partisan attack.
You said government spending was not a factor in the decision. Was it a factor?
Well, David, our political opponents and their acolytes are deliberately and dishonestly trying to conflate two different things.
Right, joining me now, someone who is an expert, former Treasury Assistant Secretary David Pearl. David, welcome to the program. First up, my viewers are looking to you to cut through the spin. Give me your take on the inflation spike, the lines we heard from the Governor there under oath in a hearing, and the commentary from the Treasurer when the finger's pointed at him.
Thanks very much, Peter. Well, the inflation spike was partly due to the premature cash rate cuts we saw last year, the last of which was only in August, a very short time ago. That did fuel the surge in private demand we saw late last year. But equally, Jim Chalmers' inability to rein in spending is absolutely contributing to inflation on the demand side, obviously, but also on the supply side as the government bids resources from the more productive private sector. Now, for Jim Chalmers to slur Australian economists with the term acolyte is appalling. Does he think that the laws of economics were drafted by the Liberal Party headquarters? He's a very narrow Labor Party creature indeed, if he thinks that's the case. And after Michelle Bullock's comments on Friday, he'd have to say that she, too, is an acolyte of the Liberal Party.
Well, the interesting thing, of course, you're referencing a whole lot of expert economists. He is not an economist, Jim Chalmers. And you don't tend to always hunt in packs, economists. And there is almost universal commentary now. In some cases, it's sheer warning about the government spending debt to GDP and the fact that our debt, and I think I've got it there for the screen, 22 to 26, the budget forecast, we're exceeding $1 trillion of debt. Government spending's just under $800 billion. Almost every one of the big budget measures, just think of Snowy 2.0 is a good one, way over time, way over budget, huge increases in public servants, and not just public servant growth, but the growth in government-related industries and entities, as even Joel Fitzgibbon, a former Labor man, was saying last week, is crowding out the labour market in terms of public sector access. And all we hear about is tax reform, which means tax hikes, and nothing, David, nothing at all about productivity.
Well, let me get back to spending. I appeared on your program the day of my EFO, and I said to you at the time that Australia was experiencing an inflation crisis and Chalmers was pouring fuel on the flame. So Chalmers, the argument about whether it's more private or more public is beside the point. Jim Chalmers controls the fiscal policy lever. Michelle Bullock and her board are pulling the monetary policy lever. If he doesn't cut spending, we'll have higher interest rates for longer and unemployment will go up further. All you have to know, and all your listeners have to know, is that Jim Chalmers in WIFO announced that real spending growth would be 4.5% this financial year, or in nominal terms, 9%.
All right, explain to my viewers that this information today that the Australian National Audit Office is saying we're not getting enough from departments in terms of their oversight of what they spend, and we're talking about nearly $900 billion here, billion dollars. We're not getting enough response from them to assure the taxpayer that what we spend as a government is value for money. Why is this a concern?
Well, there are two things there, Peter. One, Treasury and the Department of Finance traditionally held the fiscal reins, and limited spending proposals coming up to Expenditure Review Committee. That's no longer the case under Stephen Kennedy and now Jenny Wilkinson. In fact, Kennedy and Wilkinson, you might recall, Peter, authored the JobKeeper program, which paid up to $38 billion to firms that did not suffer a decline in turnover during the pandemic. And they occupy the two most senior positions in the public service. So the rot starts from the top. In the public service, nobody's career is threatened by a cost overrun or a poor supervision of a contract. Absolutely not.
I think that's probably where we start if we want to make reform. I've got to leave it there. David Pearl, thank you.